Welcome back to Banjo Wisdom, the show in which I give some advice, I tell some stories, and I teach you how to play Cripple Creek. In this lesson, we're going to learn the parts of the banjo. I call this lesson Banjo Anatomy, and I do want to warn you right up front that this is not for children or for grown-ups. We're going to start by naming the parts of the banjo, starting up top and working our way this way. This part of the banjo is called the headstock or the peg head. And it has the tuners, also known as the pegs. Now, you might notice right off the top that the first two things I've told you each have two different names. And in that respect, the banjo is a little bit like the Lord of the Rings saga. So bear with me. Moving up from the headstock is the nut. Now, there's nothing pejorative about that name. It's just called the nut. And it's made out of, sometimes it's made out of bone. Sometimes it's made out of plastic. I guess it might be made out of other kinds of rocks or things. But the purpose of the nut is it's got notches for the strings and it keeps the strings spaced just perfectly. Then these silver things you see going across are frets, and frets are for making notes sound crisp and clear. In the old days, before they figured out how to play the banjo, there were fretless banjos, and fretless banjos were nothing to worry about. But when you made a note, it may not have been that crisp or clear sounding. So adding the frets to the banjo really help a banjo to ring nice and clearly. This is called the neck. This part here, there's actually no alternate name for the neck. That's just the one name for it. This is the fretboard. These are the inlays. This is called a hearts and flowers inlay, which is a very popular inlay pattern. It's the one that Earl Scruggs had on his famous Granada banjo. This is called the pot assembly, and that includes the tension hoop, the brackets. Tension hoop is also called the, by the way, the tension hoop is also called the stretcher band. And what the tension hoop does is it pulls this head tight. This is called the head. Now, I do want you to be careful when you refer to this as the head, because if you're talking to a military person, they use the term head to mean bathroom. And there can be confusion, and I learned it the hard way. So I'm just telling you, this head is not what the military guys mean when they say the head. So the tension hoop or the stretcher band pulls the head tight when you tighten these hooks. And it stretches the head over the rim and the tone ring. Now, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to take my banjo apart a little bit here. These screws are called the lugs. And they hold the resonator onto the banjo. The resonator is the wooden part on the back. So now I'm taking this off, and I'm going to show you the rim. This is the rim, and the rim is most often made out of maple. And you can see here perhaps a little bit what the tone ring, which is it's a piece of metal. Sometimes it's made out of bronze. Sometimes it's made out of other metal. I'm not sure what. This one is gold plated. This is called a flathead tone ring because when the head is stretched over it, it's flat. There's something called an archtop tone ring, which has sort of another sort of rim, a ring about 1 inch in all the way around, which makes that part of the head higher. Bluegrass banjo players, for the most part, prefer the flathead tone ring, although some people, especially people who are fans of Ralph Stanley, will prefer the raised head tone ring. These are called the coordinator rods. They are for adjusting the angle of the neck. And the angle of the neck is important for the purpose of the action of the banjo. Now, the action of any instrument that's any string instrument, the action is the distance from the string to the fretboard. So low action is easier to play. High action is less likely to buzz. So you want an action that works for the way you play without buzzing and that's comfortable for you. These hooks are called I think they're called tension hooks. And you just screw them to tighten the head. This part that comes out here is called the flange. This is the resonator. By the way, I'm going to show you the back. It's really beautiful. This is a beautiful banjo. I'm very blessed to have this beautiful Gibson Granada banjo. Isn't that a beautiful finish? I've dinged it up a little bit. I apologize. So I'm going to put that back on here. The resonator kind of projects the sound forward, which is why sometimes a banjo will sound better to the audience than it will to the player, because the music is going that direction. Now, very important thing about these screws, you don't want to cross thread them because then it'll be ruined. There's a trick you can learn, and this works with anything that has a screw. And that trick is you put the screw in the hole, but you don't turn it yet. You just get it in there, and then you turn it backwards until you feel it click. And when you feel it click, then you start screwing it forward. And that keeps you from cross-threading it. And that works with any screw. So that's an important life lesson. And I like to kind of start each of the screws a little bit before I screw them all the way in. It's somewhat like changing a tire in that respect, because I think when you change a tire on the lugs, you're supposed to kind of go opposite, tighten them kind of in a star pattern. So I screw them in a little bit. And once they tighten up, you don't have to go too tight with them. All right, this is called the bridge. This stair-step design on this one is called a compensated bridge. And compensated bridges compensate for, well, it's called a compensated bridge. And this is a tailpiece, and you'll notice I've got this piece of light sort of suede cloth. It's called a chamois cloth. Chamois is spelled something like chamois. I think it's a French word. It's pronounced chamois. By the way, if you want to learn the French language, the first step is just stop pronouncing the last syllable of things. This is called the armrest, which can be misleading because it's where you rest your arm. That's the parts of the banjo. I've got a strap on here. You'll probably want to have a strap. It helps you when you're standing so that it doesn't slip. Now, I always use a strap when I'm standing, especially when I'm playing the banjo. Next, I'm going to show you the next little bit that we need to know for playing Cripple Creek, and it's the forward-reverse roll. Now, the forward-reverse roll is just like the forward roll, but then you switch it around. Do you ever have one of those blenders that has like an impact lever, where like you put your ice cream and your peanut butter and your chocolate in there and some ice and a little bit of milk, and like you turn it on and it spins, and then you can have this like little impact lever that like starts spinning it the opposite direction, right? That's kind of like the forward reverse roll. But don't put your fingers in a blender. So the forward reverse roll starts like a forward roll. 5, 2, 1, 5, 2, 1, right? So the forward reverse roll starts that way, but then when you get to the 5, you go backwards again. So it's 5, 2, 1, 5, 1, 2, 5, 2, 1, 5, 1, 2. And you can just keep doing it. That's called the forward reverse roll, and you will use it in Cripple Creek. Now the thing you'll need for Cripple Creek is the C position chord, which is done by, on the left hand, take your ring finger and put it on the first string 2 frets up from the capo. Take your middle finger and put it on the 4th string 2 frets up from the capo, and take your index finger and put it on the 2nd string 1 fret up from the capo, and that makes a C position. And since we have a capo on the A position, I'm actually playing a D chord. And then that position can be repeated in any number of places up the neck. And by the way, I want to remind you, when I say up the neck, I mean this way, and when I say down the neck, I mean that way. That seems backwards to some people. I don't know why. But anyway, here's a C chord. Well, it's a D chord because we're in the key of A. And then you can take it up, and then take it up. So once you learn a chord position, you can use it in a lot of places, and it becomes a lot of different chords. In the song of Cripple Creek, you only need it here. So I've shown you the C chord, and I've shown you the forward reverse roll, and that's enough for today's banjo lesson. Thanks for joining me. God bless you.